Now let us get into the details with respect to yarn deployment modes. So when it comes to yarn, there is a additional control argument called deploy mode, and there either you can say client mode or cluster mode, and we will understand what does that mean and what are the repercussions of one using on the other or over the other. So to get the syntax, you can just say Spark submit and hit enter. So there are certain control arguments which are yarn only, such as num executors and all those things, which we'll be seeing at a later point in time. If you scroll up here, there is a deploy mode. Again, this deploy mode is not only relevant to yarn, it is relevant to cluster also, whether to launch the driver program locally, client, or one of the worker machines inside the cluster. And the default is client. So if you do not specify deploy mode, it means it will be creating the driver program locally rather than on the one of the nodes in the cluster. So when we actually run the program with the client, it executed successfully. Now I'll be changing the execution mode to cluster, and let us see what will happen. So let us take this tracking URL. First of all, you can see that it is taking a bit more time to just initiate the job, because it has to get the resources for the driver program also, not just the workers. And it failed. I will explain why it is failed. You can just scroll up, and here the issue is not very obvious. Let us go through the exceptions and see if it gives any obvious information. You can see that issue is not very obvious. Now we can actually take the tracking URL and paste it here and hit enter. Okay, you can go to the logs here. Okay, it will not work because wn02.itverse.com is behind firewall. You have to do something called SSH tunneling to get this, so that's why it will not work. However, I will explain why it is failing. The reason why it is failing is if you actually go to the tracking URL and click on history, it did not even create this Spark job. No, it should have created this Spark job. Let me see why it is not working. I think it did not even create this Spark job for whatever reason. That's why it is taking to this here. So let me go to applications here. Yeah, so it is only going there. Okay, so it is saying that library directory, this is not existing. So I thought it is failing for some other reason, but I will tell you what is happening here. Means one of the issue that can occur when you actually run in a driver mode. So the same issue which you have highlighted here, it is failing for a different reason, but even if it is working, there is another issue which can cause. That is nothing but the path which you have specified with respect to the products. So the products is available in this location, data retail DB products. Okay, now when we actually run it in cluster mode, it actually creates the driver program in one of the nodes in the cluster, not just on the gateway node. As it creates the driver program in one of the nodes in the cluster, and as our Scala code has to be executed over there, when it try to read this location, as this location is not available, it will obviously fail. So that is one reason why your Spark applications might fail when you actually try to use cluster mode instead of client mode. So on client we have this, so it will work. But when it comes to cluster, your driver program can be running on one of the nodes in the cluster, and hence you will not be able to read the data from the local file system. Let me produce that scenario by saying Spark submit master yarn and deploy mode cluster conf spark.ui.port equal to 12901, and then conf spark.dynamic allocation.enabled equal to false. So there is some issue here, illegal. Okay, it should be Spark shell. Sorry. Okay, here it is saying cluster deploy mode is not applicable to Spark shells. I thought I will be able to run it, but we cannot, and hence we can't do much by using Spark shell also. So we'll take a simple program and try to run it in cluster mode, and you should be able to see that a driver program will be created on one of the nodes in the cluster. As Scala code, especially with respect to local file IO, cannot be run on that nodes, it will fail. Okay, so that is one of the side effect of using client versus cluster mode. But the advantage of using cluster mode is if your driver programs are heavy, your gateway node might become bottleneck. Whereas if you can run it in cluster mode, as you have many nodes in the cluster, that overhead is offloaded to multiple nodes in the cluster, and hence you will be able to run higher number of jobs in cluster mode than client mode. With the client mode, if you have very heavy driver programs, then at some point or the other, your gateway will become bottleneck for running the jobs. So to overcome that, we can leverage the cluster mode. However, there are some functional differences between running it in client mode versus cluster mode. You should be aware of those things before choosing one over the other.